Hey everybody, this is Zach Mullins from the Grip Show, and I've been doing a lot of these weights in detail videos or covering different grip implements and stuff like that. So um, one of the things I'm going to get into today is pretty much the gold standard for blob lifting. It's the original feat of strength that Richard Soren came up with, which is the Fatman blob. Um, and first generation York dumbbells that would bend easier, or the heads of the dumbbells would break off. The handles were real thin. Just the way they were made, they would get bent a lot. And I have a full length interview with Richard Soren where he goes into detail about the original story of the blob and talks about the, naming it, the origin of it, how it came to be. So if you're interested in that, go check that out on the Grip Show. And I'll be able to put the pictures or links up, so you can have access to that too. But it's all like right here free on YouTube. And so with grip strength, there's a lot of these feats of strength in general that sort of have like a threshold or a certain standard. For like the Thomas Inch dumbbell, that's the original 78 kilo, 172 pound dumbbell that Thomas Inch had. That's kind of the, that gold standard for, what's elite, or, the original feat that people are chasing after. So if we were to get into blobs, which are basically, York dumbbells that have either been cut or, like in the past, broken and, naturally just damaged. So it's 1/2 of a dumbbell head. So in the original feat that Richard Soren came up with, he's clearing out a gym, and, he gets into picking these things up. And this is a guy that, closed the Captains of Crush #3 when that wasn't even really happening or people weren't doing it. Plate pinching, 2 old school York plates, deep dish, which is a ridiculous feat of strength. I mean, people have seen like Eddie Hall and Brian Shaw, people like that maybe do it on the TV show that they had. And I think at the time, maybe there was only about 6 or 7 people that maybe had done it ever. So, Richard is the first person that I'm aware of that actually had documentation of it and, full proof. So with Richard kind of blazing some of these trails for the plate pinch and the grippers, I guess it's only fitting that, he kind of had another contribution that he gave to the grip world or strength world. And, that's the York Fatman blob. So, he's got a great grip to begin with. So he's cleaning out all this stuff, and he goes to pick up a 1/200, like you can see here, and he couldn't get it to move. And with somebody that, already has that level of grip strength, they're already used to basically toying with anything when it comes to grip. He wasn't able to move it. So then that got him kind of thinking, got the wheels turning, hey, let me start training this, or maybe there's some benefit here. So instead of seeing it as a broken dumbbell, he saw it as a challenge. And I mean, you see where it's gone nowadays. I mean, you have, different influencers, people, 4-time World's Strongest Man winner Brian Shaw has, the Shaw Classic, where he's even had, blob ladders featured, or on his own channel, he'll show these things. And we wouldn't really have any of that stuff, or it wouldn't even have become popular if Richard maybe didn't have that idea. If he just tossed the dumbbells or tossed them out as trash, I'm not saying we wouldn't have gotten to where we're at, but how much longer would it have taken? So always have to pay respect to the originator of something, and just make sure that they get that credit, and make sure that history stays in place as we move forward with whatever it turns into, right? So yeah, Richard had to train that for quite a while before he could actually successfully lift it. And from there, he went on to, do crazy feats, adding weight to it, everything else, cleaning it, snatching it, whatever. So just want to kind of talk about this feat of strength, this piece, show some stuff off. So with the Fatman blob, one of the things that everybody's going to know is the original is 1/2. Now, a lot of these things came in probably decently heavy. So you're looking at, the full dumbbell, because you have to have about a pound or so at least to account for the handle when it gets cut out. So for these dumbbells, to get a 50-pound blob, or in this case, these are both right around 53 pounds or 53 and some change. So just under 54 pounds for these. These are on the kind of the heavier side. But still, for a 100-pound dumbbell, usually if you're cutting that 1 pound out of the middle, you're going to be getting into dumbbells that are probably 104 to 108 pounds total to get, a 53, 54-pound blob. A lot of these Fatman blobs, or the, pre-USA stamped York dumbbells, would come in probably, like I said, 104 to 108, but the blobs themselves, Fatman Blob will come in generally 51 to 54 pounds. So somewhere in that range. Now, obviously there's other factors, texture and how, texture, the paint, a couple pounds variance in the weight, sometimes even casting errors. There might be different rough marks or rough patches on one. Climate that they're stored in, some get rustier, they take chalk better, some are real slick. So there's a lot of different things that can go into, lifting a blob or getting that first blob lift. So with these things being, 51 to 54 pounds and having these really big slopes. So I'm going to have other videos up, or other images for you to look at. But, this is a thing that as you're trying to lift it, it slopes out really big here in the middle. So if I was to stand up and hold this, right, even just here, my thumb is barely on this line, just able to get a grip, and then I'm here. And that's as far as my fingers are really going down the other side. So to be able to squeeze this thing as it's basically bowed out like that, serious feat of grip strength. So this is kind of the gold standard. So if you were looking at blobs in comparison to inch dumbbells, the Fatman blob that Richard Soren first named, the blob, that would be kind of like the 172 or the 78 kilo Thomas inch dumbbell. Now, yes, there are people that, make light work of this these days and lift blobs that are much bigger. But it still doesn't mean that this is not a tremendous feat of strength or that this loses any credibility just because somebody else can do, above and beyond it, or, times have evolved. So with all that being said, this is pretty much your gold standard for blob lifting. And then if you can go above and beyond, obviously, we'd all love to climb the ladder and do the best we can. Slope is very big. It's very heavy. With these Fatman blobs, one side is going to slope out a little bit more than the other. And that's the side that you would want to put your fingers on. So for this first generation, the pre-USA stamped, you will see where there's a cut mark, or where that dumbbell has been, either cut or broken and then sanded down. That is the side you would want your fingers on. If you were to put that cut side over to the thumb and put your fingers on the outside, that would make that lift slightly harder. So just something to keep in mind. There are, easier ways, harder ways to lift it, even though it is one object. So giving full credit to Richard Soren, kind of broke down some of the origin, threw the pictures up so you guys could kind of, maybe go to that interview or at least check out the Blob clip where he goes into detail about this specific thing and how it came to be. So the other thing I want to get into is just some different feats with it, right? Obviously there's just a pinch it and deadlift it. There could be a double lift where you're lifting two at the same time, cleaning it, snatching it, curling it even. So there's tons of different challenges from a grip perspective that you get out of this that is very hard to duplicate with loadable blobs, no matter how accurate they are or how accurate the casting seems. They're not loaded the same way. It's just not quite the same thing. It's not a bad alternative, but it's still not the exact thing. So those are good tools, but I'm the kind of person I would just rather have the real thing. And, but these things are hard to get sometimes. And these days, the prices are jacked up pretty high. I can remember the first time the first Fatman I got, which was this one right here. And I was actually working on a vehicle at the time and had an alarm set on my phone. That way I knew when the auction on eBay was getting ready to run out and I was going to throw in a last second bid, outbid somebody. And so yeah, I was actually in the middle of work one time and placing bets, but I had a timer going. It wasn't like I was watching my phone the whole time, but I had an alarm set, hey, once I get down to that last minute or something, boom, throw in a bid, and actually won that auction. And I think I gave just a little bit over $300 for this one. And that was probably late 2020, I believe. I'd have to go back and maybe double check the dates, but I think about late 2020 or so, maybe 2021, but I think it was about 2020. Yeah, I'm going to go with 2020 right now. I'll pop the real date in once I go back and double check it. But in the moment, doing the best I can. So I was just so excited to get it. And, I didn't even really have a collection of smaller blobs. I didn't even have anything to work up to it. I just wanted to lift this thing. And a big part of these feats too is, when you're getting into it, until you actually see the thing, or if you haven't had experience lifting it, then you don't really know what to expect. So watching a video online or having this perception of how hard it is for someone else doesn't always directly translate to, yourself. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to find out as I was so new to this sport, or so new to just this style of lifting, was I wanted to know, like, do I have a shot at this? Is this even possible? Because if it's possible, I don't care how hard it is. I'm going to keep training it. I'm going to do the best I can to get there, and raise my level. But, I don't know. There's certain things you're just going to always hit a ceiling with. Like, I don't know if I was going to try to log press 400 pounds. It's probably not going to happen, right? You know what I mean? So I'm never going to be a person to put like a ceiling on what I'm capable of. I'm always going to try to, reach maximum potential. But sometimes, we're all going to reach a certain point where, something just isn't obtainable. So the first thing I wanted to see was, can I lift this thing, or what does it feel like in person? And what does that look like? Am I going to lift it right out of the box? Is it going to take me 3 years? So I had no idea until I got it. Once I got it, it was definitely a challenge, and I could not lift it. I really couldn't even break it off the ground, but I could kind of drag it, or I could almost kind of get it to hover. And that gave me enough hope to say, okay, this is very doable. And I still had some doubts because at the time I wasn't familiar with, the pre-USA first generation and the, later generation, next generation Blob, where they had changed the profile of it. It was a little bit lighter and a little bit, slimmer on one side. And so it probably putting it more at like the, 75 to 85% range of this. So, just with that next generation being a little bit different and being easier and being new to it, trying to do all my research, when I got this, I assumed, okay, yes, this is a pre-USA, stamp. There's no USA stamp on the York side. I could tell the difference, and I knew enough about that, but it did have like this casting defect on the bottom of it. And that had me questioning, like, was there a USA stamp there? Did the USA stamp get messed up? So even though I was pretty sure it was a Fatman, and I was going off of Jed Johnson's resources and pretty much anybody I could talk to, I didn't know. So I had this weird like doubt in my head when I was like, man, what if this isn't a Fatman, and what if this is just the next generation? And, oh my God, if the next generation is this hard, maybe I will never lift the Fatman, right? So it was really reassuring once I kind of did some more homework, checked out some more information, and talked with some people. I confirmed, that I had the original, Fatman Blob. So it was a pre-USA York. I was right. And, now I have 2 of each. So I have 2 pre-USA Fatman Blobs, and then I have 2 next gen. So those are the only things in my Blob collection that I have doubles of. And I kind of like those because I feel like the 50-pound Blob, or the, half 100 for the next generation, and the Fatman Blobs, those are pretty much the most traditional, the most classic. And for me, that is why I have 2. So I can, maybe do double lifts, double cleans, even farmer's walks, just something there to kind of keep, testing myself and improving on those sort of gold standard sizes. Not to say that I won't do double lifts of other things. I've done a 125 York Legacy, double lift, which was probably my biggest, simultaneous Blob combo. So I took, half of 2 halves of a 125 pound dumbbell and pinched those. That's probably, for a double Blob lift, that's probably my best double Blob lift to date, which is much, much harder than this. But like I said, these can be used for so much more now that I'm at an ability, or at a level where I can, lift with them, or can regularly lift them in training. Will, okay, increase, the timed holds, the carries for distance, or, cleaning them, just whatever I can do to add difficulty and improve my grip strength, or improve strength in general. So I do think that is a cool thing, to at least have doubles, so that way you can kind of, work both hands at the same side and nothing's uneven. So kind of covered the next gen, kind of covered the Fatman. But yeah, one of the biggest things is just making sure that you are aware of what you're lifting, and you're doing your research on how to lift it. Like I just mentioned, the, fingers on the cut side for one of these. Well, and then if you get to like the legacies, well, okay, if you get to a newer version where it's like a legacy York dumbbell or Blob, the cut side is much flatter. So that's the side you'd want to put your thumb on. unless you were trying to up the difficulty and do a reverse lift with your thumb on the big slope side. So one of the biggest things is just with any feat of strength is learning the history, finding the origin, looking at what everybody did before you, and then, putting in that effort, putting in the planning, the training to achieve the feat or go beyond the feat. But if you don't know what you're lifting or why you're lifting it or what it's really doing for you, it's probably going to take a lot longer. It's going to be way more frustrating, and it's going to be just a pain in the ass to deal with over time. So you'll save yourself a lot of trouble if you can really just do your due diligence and try to look at as many resources and as many different places as you can to verify that, what you have is, the thing you're actually trying to lift, and then how to attack that. So that's all I'll really get into with that for now. Some other things I want to get into with these is, there are a lot of situations in lifting where if we're training within a certain range of motion and then we decrease that range of motion, it becomes easier, right? And this isn't the case for everything, but that might be a deadlift where, somebody's deadlifting from the floor and then they do a rack pull and they can do a lot more on a rack pull with that partial range of motion. Now, some people might be stronger off the floor and weaker, at a midpoint where they might rack pull. So there might be some discrepancies there. I'm just saying, generally, if we reduce the range of motion that someone has to do a lift, the numbers generally will go up, outside of maybe some type of weakness or, a sticking point. So I bring that up because it's very similar to like box squatting or just squatting in general, where, if you squat all the time with a very, very narrow stance and then try to go wider, it's not really going to translate and you're not going to have as, as much carryover. Whereas if you are used to something wider, like pinching this versus, a plate pinch, which is maybe half of this, right? If you're pinching something wider and then going into the narrow, that generally, for me, in my opinion, is going to have a lot more carryover because you're already working without, outside that range. And by bringing it down, it's probably going to make it a more optimal grip, or you're going to have more power in that shorter range. So I kind of compare it to a squat where if you're, used to squatting wider or using a wide stance, that is still going to carry over as you, kind of get a little more narrow in your position. Whereas if you're always narrow and then try to go out, you're not going to have the same success or the same amount of carryover. So I bring that up because there's not a lot of things that have this sloped dimensions or the shape or all the challenges that a blob presents. Plate pinching, pinch blocks, Saxon bars, all these things. Everything's a little bit different. It is pinch, but you're not getting that, 4 to 5 inches wide with the slopes going out. You're not getting that same stimulus when you're pinching them. So for me, one of the first things that everybody makes a mistake of in grip, or usually finds out in grip very early, is they don't have a strong thumb, or their thumb generally is not as strong as their 4 fingers. And why would it be? Your thumb's by itself. When you're pinching something, your thumb's hanging out over here, and you got all your, 4 fingers, your whole hand, and, any level of wrist flexion. So this side is going to be way stronger than just the thumb. So the thumb is really getting hit on these blob lifts. And the good thing about that is, we use our thumb for pinching. We use our thumb for thick bar. You're going to use your thumb on every other grip lift other than like grippers and, maybe some other stuff. But even key pinch, you're using your thumb to some extent. So, there's obviously going to be examples and, maybe some outliers, but for most competition lifts, your thumb's involved, and nothing really is going to attack your thumb much better than a blob in that wide pinch position. So I think they're really valuable for that. And I bring that up because when I was first getting into grip sport and first wanted to chase some of these feats, I've often said it where I have always credited blobs for kind of giving me a head start, or I'm really glad that I started with blobs when I was training. And this was the first big goal I set out for, because that conditioned my thumb. And while I was chasing this, I didn't realize how much that was actually going to help, my thumb for, thick bar and inch dumbbells. My thumb when I went in on, narrower pinches for plate pinching. So with chasing this feat, it took me a while to do it, but I actually lifted it left-handed the first time. And when I did that and I started getting to the point where I could make this a more regular lift, once I got decent plates to pinch, or I started, getting into other forms of pinch, or even things that just required, my thumb to be stronger than it was when I started, I had to credit my progress early out the gate on, all the blob training I was doing. I was chasing this thing crazy. I was doing, maybe 2 to 3 sessions of blobs a week. And at the time it was just new. It was exciting. I was going all in. And then when I switched over to focus on some of these other feats, I made short work of benching 45s. I made, I wouldn't say short work of lifting the inch dumbbell. That took a little bit more time, but it was so much better after I'd kind of pursued some of this stuff and then went back to some of these other things. I saw instant carryover. So maybe that's not the case for everybody, or maybe the percentage of carryover that everybody gets varies a little bit. But for me and my story, this is a huge part of my early training success and early progress with grip strength. And I owe it to, chasing the blob, the original feat, and then getting so much carryover into other disciplines of grip. So I have to bring that up, right? That's, a grip benefit of it, obviously other than doing the feat, but how it carries over into other things. The other thing I'll add, there's not a lot of pieces of gym equipment or things that you're going to see laying around that are going to pack, 53 pounds in this tight of a space. So I bring that up because it doesn't take up much space if you're looking for your home gym. It's not, some like bulky stone or something. And, generally, if you were going to be doing some type of like medicine ball work, the medicine ball that you would be using, is okay, it's 8, 10, 20 pounds. It's still not even half of what this is, right? And this is probably smaller. I almost guarantee it's smaller. So when you realize that, okay, yeah, it's a grip thing, but okay, you could hold this for back extensions. You could, hold this for sled drags, anything where you just want to carry 50 pounds. You could use it for sit-ups, so you could throw the thing like a shot put. Now, granted, that's a heavy ass shot put, right? But I'm just kind of bringing that up because a lot of times tools get lumped into one category. Oh, that's a grip thing. Well, I mean, it's a grip thing, but if I was out doing a sled workout and I wanted to throw 50 pounds on real quick, just throw it on top of the plate and go, right? If I wanted to load any type of, you could hold it up and do walking lunges. You could do step ups. It's literally just a compact 53 pounds that you could toss into any other thing. And I always say that, the tool or the implements you're using are only as good as your creativity and, what you want to do with it. So this thing can be as limited or as beneficial as you make it. Just got to bring that up. But yeah, I'll stick to some more of the grip stuff now. But it just has a lot of training benefits and has a lot more. So if you can't lift it, it doesn't mean that it has to sit and collect dust or it can't be beneficial to your gym or people in it. So if you're struggling with the price point, especially these days, like I said, I got these both for probably around $300, $315. That was years ago. Now the prices are going up and people keep raising the prices to stupid amounts, $400, $500 a blob for these, not all the smaller sizes, but for these particular ones that are the most sought after. They keep jacking the price up. And, is it worth it? Is that justified? That's up to the lifter and only they can answer that. Maybe somebody that's no problem to throw $500 at it, or maybe to somebody else, they're like, I could never imagine doing that. So everybody's a little bit different with where they're at and what they're trying to do with it and how much it means to them. But I always want to bring in, other reasons why, it could serve your training and not just be a one-off grip challenge that collects dust. So different things I've done with these. Oh man, just to get into some fun feats and try to throw some stuff in, obviously lifting the Thomas inch dumbbell and the Fatman Blob. That is like one of my favorite combos when it comes to grip strength feats. Taking kind of the gold standard of blobs that Richard Soren came up with, taking the Thomas inch dumbbell that is named after Thomas Inch and his unliftable dumbbell challenge that he did long ago. Man, that is, just two of probably the most popular, thick bar and pinch feats just wrapped into the same lift. So I really love, anytime I see somebody lifting a Fatman Blob inch dumbbell or just doing any variation of a dumbbell and blob lift, whether it's smaller or heavier. I think that's a good way to maintain history, a cool way to continuously kind of measure what people used to do, where the game is now and where it might go in the future. So other things, I've cleaned other blobs while lifting these, or I've cleaned these. I've done, transferring the Thomas Inch dumbbell to my other hand and then picking up a Fatman blob. And the first time I did that, I want to say it's an old video. And last time I talked to Jed Johnson, he didn't even remember. He didn't even remember naming it this. But so I would never name something after myself. I would never even try to name something after myself. But if it comes from somebody like Jed, who was doing this, when I was probably in elementary school, and that's just to give credit to Jed's veteran status, not calling him old. But yeah, Jed was lifting some of these things when I was pretty much in, elementary or middle school. So just got to give credit to Jed. He's been doing this a long time. And it was cool for me because I transferred the inch dumbbell level, caught it, and then picked up the Fatman blob. And Jed referred to that as the Zach Mullen special. So I didn't name it. I didn't come up with that. Jed didn't even remember when he said it. I had to show him like a text from like 2 years ago at the time. This is probably years and years ago now, but I had to show him that. Like, yeah, dude, you're the one that said that. And he didn't even remember. So, but that is a crazy feat. That's one of my favorites. So hard to transfer the dumbbell, but then also, bounce back and lift the blob up after, while holding the inch dumbbell level and, after catching it. Farmers walking it. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. There are some really cool things. I know like Ben Helms has done like a blob cycle with it, which includes, a deadlift, a clean, a snatch, and a curl. And you're trying to complete those within a certain level of time. That's a great display of strength and just blob mastery. If you can, pinch lift it, clean it, snatch it above your head, and, curl it, that's a level of just well-rounded grip strength and true mastery, in my opinion. And you just don't see stuff like that very often. But just letting you know what's out there, just letting you know kind of some of the other feats that you can see with this stuff. A lot of times, sometimes, with people with larger hands, is they will get to doing facelifts. And that's where, the blob is laid down and they're actually, doing a face pick or, pulling it here. It may look like I could do it from this angle, but like my thumb is not even on it, So I basically can just give the Fatman blob a high five. I can't really get my fingers around it to get any purchase. But there are some other lifters that have different hand dimensions or different hand shapes, like a Tim Butler. And Tim Butler is probably the best blob face lifter I've ever seen. And Tim Butler has actually taken this blob and thrown it by the face, hand to hand, and caught it in the other hand, which is ridiculous considering his hand size. We have pretty similar hands. He just has like more flexibility and different dimensions to his hand. But that is a tremendous feat of strength. But just letting you know that, like, that's another thing you can get into with this. So there's lots of challenges. You can always add weight to it, increase the feat. But this is the gold standard for blobs. It really is a beneficial tool. I'm very thankful that Richard Soren, kind of sought out that challenge and his level of creativity with it. And I'm really excited to see it kind of get more mainstream attention through maybe people like Brian Shaw showing it on YouTube, or people that are visiting gyms and getting more access to them and filming it. We're seeing a lot more people on the internet finding out about this stuff, trying their hand at it, understanding how difficult it is. And that adds credibility and a little bit of, more respect to it, as opposed to it kind of just being an underground thing where people just look at the weight and turn their head because 50 pounds isn't heavy. It depends on how that 50 pounds is, molded, or how it's, shaped and packaged. So, I really, I hope that I gave you guys some decent, looks at the blob. I know I talked about other benefits and things in the background, but while I'm doing all that, hopefully you enjoyed watching all the different feats, all the different lifts that I put up. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of seeing a closer look at it if you've never seen one in person, whether that be, how it looks in someone's hand, the markings on it, just all the details, right? It's weights in detail, or it's just a grip implement. But some of these things aren't in every gym and we don't see them very often. So it's very cool to give somebody a closer look at it, or to, get an idea if that's something you want to chase, or if you're even interested in it. It's nice to have that, preview or close look at it before you start investing that kind of money. So with that being said, it's really all I got for the Fatman blob. I mean, it's a gold standard. It's a classic. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think it's only going to just continue to evolve. And with York not producing these style of dumbbells anymore, whatever's out there in the wild is what's out there. And yeah, I hope you guys can get some, or get to a gym that has it, and try your hand at this classic test of grip strength. And if anybody has any future video requests, implements you'd like to see, just drop it below in the comments. Let me know. Reach out, message me, and that'll pretty much do it for this one. So thank you guys for tuning in, and hope you found the information useful.